Alrighty, so today we're going to be rigging this little guy right here. And we're going to be using a plugin called Advanced Skeleton, okay? So Advanced Skeleton, an amazing program. It is free, so if you're going through Maya's outlet, you're going to click, you're just going to Google Advanced Skeleton. It's going to take you to this little website, and you can do download, and you can install it with their .msi if you're on Windows right there. If you go to their website though, it'll give you this zip right here, advancedskeleton.zip, and this program is free. However, if you're doing any paid work, then you have to purchase it, and you'll see if you click the purchase button, for commercial purposes, $3,000, right? So $3,000 for that. If you're doing just like a freelance license, you can do $750. But you might be like, oh wow, that's an insane amount. However, this program is incredible. Like, this price line right here is not out of the question for like the amount of functionality it has. So amazing plugin, huge price. However, the price is worth it if you're doing a lot of if you're doing a lot of rigging stuff, right? So let's go into it, right? So we're gonna rig up this guy, and first things first, let's export the mesh. If you're in Painter, going to Maya. If you're in Maya, just skip ahead to when I get into the Maya section. But if you're in my class, do apply triangulation. So file, export mesh, apply triangulation, and export that. I already exported to him as King Tries, because he has triangles, you know, now, so yeah. And then if you're also in my class, export textures, dude, export the textures. And we're gonna be rendering in Maya, so export for an Arnold style format. But yeah, there we go. So next up, let's do some file prep, and then let's get the plugin running. So I'm going to import. I'm going to do file import. I'm going to import that FBX. Boom. Okay, so there we go. We got our scene, and I'm just going to assign a new material to this stuff, because I want to give it an Arnold standard surface, and because we're going to be rendering it in Arnold eventually. And there we go, right? So next up in file prep, if you've been working on this character and they're like way underneath here, and your pivot point's off center there, or not off center. Actually, let's get it off center too, you know? So what we can do is we need to get this character standing on the grid perfectly, and we need the pivot point to be at the bottom, and we need to delete the history off this character. That's all the file prep, the file prep that we have to do. So I'm gonna hold D. I'm just gonna select that top part. I'm gonna hold D. I'm gonna hold V to snap to verts right there. So now I'm snapped completely halfway on that model. And I'm also gonna get this a little bit into the center of the character. I'm gonna hold D and V again, and I'm gonna get this aligned to the bottom of the feet right there. Right, so now my pivot point is at that bottommost point. Now if I hold X, it's gonna snap to grid. And if I get this character, boom, right there, now they're standing perfectly on the grid in the center. You can make sure that they're nice and symmetrical, because we're gonna rig this character symmetrically. Now, Advanced Skeleton, as it says, is advanced, so even if your character is asymmetrical, you can rig them. It will probably take a little bit of extra time though, because you need to then, you know, fix two sides of the skeleton and then generate the rig, but yeah. So that's the file prep. A few last things with it are that you're gonna want to, I'll wait on that one. You want to edit, delete all by type history, right? Because all of these nodes could have some history if you started changing them or something, or did like a multi-cut. Get that history out of there. Just do edit, delete all by type history. That'll make it run a lot faster. Next up, we're going to take all of these, and now that we're perfectly on that grid, we're going to modify freeze transformations. It's going to zero out any transformation that you have in there, and that'll be perfect for us, right? So freeze transformations, delete all by type history, and then we can save scene as, and I'm gonna save this as King Rig File Prep, because I want to be very clear on every stage of this what we're doing. Rigging can be complex, okay? So next up, let's get our plugin working, right? So I just downloaded the newest version, and let's see. Oh, it should be my other drives downloads folder. There we go. So we have Advanced Skeleton. If you're on Windows, you can just use that installer. Otherwise, you might want to right click, extract to Advanced Skeleton. There we go. And then you'll be met with this file right here. You might be like, oh, nice. I'm going to double click Advanced Skeleton. Don't do that. Don't do that. You already have Maya open. And Advanced Skeleton is really cool because you can just left click, drag the install file into the scene, and there you go. Look at that. So now you have the Advanced Skeleton buttons on your rigging shelf. You might want to switch to the rigging shelf before you do that, so it's not like on your poly modeling shelf or something. Or you can make a whole new shelf specifically for Advanced Skeleton. But now we're good to go, right? So if we click this, boom, here is the plugin itself. So first steps first, we go down this big list of all of these little nodes in here, right? So what we're gonna do is first do the model clean. It says group your model, so you have one top node. We already have that. If you don't, just select all your mesh stuff, do Control G or Command G on a Mac. Then I'm gonna double click this and rename that Geo. It wants that top group to be Geo, and I'm going to save that over the King file prep. You can also model clean, so this checks to make sure that that group is there. It also checks to make sure that your character is like symmetrical and stuff, and make sure you save before that you do this because it can be destructive. So yeah, so be careful for that. But yeah, that can check for it. You can also do model check for symmetry, and it also zeroes out all that stuff. So I basically already showed you how to do that. Next up, it says create a new scene. So we're gonna do that. And then it says reference in the model. What is referencing? So if you have a really bulky model, you probably don't want that to be in every single file that you save, every single animation that you save, right? So if you reference it in, that file exists somewhere else on your computer, right? This file right here, that's just the mesh. We're referencing in. It doesn't actually exist in this file. We haven't titled it yet, but it doesn't exist in here, right? It merely is a pointer, right? This thing right here, it's a ref node. It's a pointer to that other file, right? Meaning that whichever computer you end up going to, you're going to need to bring that along with you, okay? So make sure you bring that King file prep, like whatever your file equivalent is, wherever you go. Otherwise, when you open up your rig, it won't have the character attached to it. So let's do a little display layers. It's in your channel box. It adds it to a display layer. So if you like this like gray sort of wireframe, keep it with the T selected. If you don't like that, you can keep it on reference. And so on T and R, you cannot select the character, but if you leave it blank, then you can still select your mesh, which is nice. And you can turn it off and on with the little V. So next up is we need to actually get our joints in here, right? So I'm going to go to Fit Skeletons. I'm going to import the biped. Now, the important thing about the biped is that it's going to be scaled at like kind of a arbitrary size, right? And the joint placement is not correct for every model, right? Like if you have stylistic proportions like this guy, it's not gonna work, right? So I'm just gonna simply move it up, or I'm just gonna scale up from selecting that ring, pressed R, and I scaled up. Now we need to go and start moving our joints around. I don't like moving the joints in the wireframe as much. We can definitely get by doing it. So if that's your jam, then go for it. But I like to go press 5 to go into my shaded view. And I like to go to shading and do X-ray joints. Boom, perfect. Now you can see it through the mesh, and then you still get to see your mesh. It's the best of both worlds, guys. It's amazing. So next up, this root joint. We need to place it at the root of the character, known as the pelvis. So this is going to be in the pelvic area. It is also going to be center of mass. You're going to hear me say that a lot. And what I mean by that is like if we look at this side as like the front of him, and then the back side of that belt as the back, we're trying to get it just like in the center of that, center of mass right there. Because I know your spine joints, for instance, are like very close to the back right here, like close to this. But we're gonna eventually move those center of mass just because it bends better in 3D. So it might not be anatomically perfect to the real world, but it should be decently convincing in 3D. Like you'll get a little bit better deformation that way. So next up, I'm going to move the hip to be where the hip is. I'm pushing it a little bit further in though, because I want it to be center of mass. Center of mass. That's the key word for today, everybody. So let's put this into the knee area. And again, I'm just trying to get it dead center in there. Same for the ankle. I know it's labeled foot, but I want you to be thinking of these as the pivot points for that model, right? I want you to be thinking of it as the pivot point. So I'm gonna put this right in the ankle. This is where it's gonna pivot around. These four right here, these extra ones, these are essentially pivot points, but for little extra controls on the foot. Like if you need to raise from the heel, like if you're raising your toes up and you're orbiting around that, this is going to be the pivot point for raising those toes, right? If you're standing on your tippy toes instead, you're going to be moving that, you're going to be orbiting around that. So think about these as the pivot point for that. If you're rolling your foot side to side, this is the pivot point for the interior roll. This is the pivot point for the exterior roll. So I'm just putting that on the outsides, like the outermost points of the character, right, for the foot. Next up, this toes. I get good results from being in the middle right here or being on the bottom. I get good results either way. But look, as I move that, it's moving all those other ones that we worked hard to get positioned, right? That's gonna be annoying, right? So is there a way to move just that one and not the child joints? Absolutely. If you hold D, you can now move that freely without affecting the child joints. So I'm gonna put this a little bit back to be right at that bend of like where the ball of the foot starts. And like I said, I like to put this on the bottom. If you wanna just keep it center of mass, you get good deformation that way too. Get good deformation that way as well. So there we go. I'm liking that, looking perfect. And then next up, we are pretty much done with the leg. There's one last thing to check, and I'm just gonna mess up my model a little bit just so you can see what it looks like when it's wrong. If you scroll down in your list, right, we just did the fit skeleton stuff. Now we're gonna go a little bit lower down into the edit menu, display. If you click pull vector, boom. If I press 5 to get non-shaded, look at that. You see that triangle? That's the direction that your knee is going to bend by default, right? Let me tell you, if you're bending your knee like that by default, your leg is probably broken. So be careful for that. The way that we fix that is by moving either the hip. I'm gonna hold D, I'm gonna move it left and right. See that? It's kind of fixing that to make it point straight forward as a knee should bend. You can also move the knee as well. Oh wow, that really fixed it. I'm probably gonna go with that one. You can also move the foot. So whichever one solves it best, as long as the joints are generally still in the middle, right? So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna fix it with the knee joint. And then if I need it to be like a little bit further over, maybe I'll do a little bit of the hip so that knee joint doesn't get too far towards the center there. Boop, right there, look at that. Actually, I'm gonna do just a smidgen more. Nice, there you go, look at that. That's like, oh, that's so straightforward right there, dude. Perfect, so that's beautiful. We like that here. And then our root, I might be a little bit too high. Nah, it's kind of looking all right. I'm just gonna lower it a little bit though. Boom. Next up, the chest. That's what we're gonna do next. If we take the chest, I'm gonna move it center of mass on this guy right there. And then the idea for this chest joint is I try to get it aligned with your sternum, right? Your like solar plexus, right? That little bone in there, that area. Get it at that same height value, but then just pushed back to be center of mass. That's usually where I keep my chest joints. And then this spine 1, I hold D and I get it to be center of, like kind of equidistant between the two, the root and the chest. And then I get it center of mass as well. Boom. There you go. So that's how you properly position that. Next up, scapula. Hugely important joint. Hugely important. This one I'm going to have to hold for because this guy has a lot of armor on. But you can see his neck line in here, right? So that's that's like the very top of the neck. It's a little bit easier to see in motion. But this scapula, think of this as your shrugging control, right? For that, like a shrugging motion with your character. Think of this as the pivot point for that, right? So if I bring this out too far and bring that shoulder in, look, you have like no shrug capability. Ugh, you need to shrug in life, guys. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put this kind of, if you feel on your own body, like the very interior parts of your collarbone, in terms of like left and right, right? So this guy's collarbone probably about right here. So I'm gonna put that right there. I'm gonna go from this side view. I'm gonna get that center of mass in terms of like front and back here. Man, this guy's got a lot of layers, dude. And then I'm gonna lower it to be a little bit in line with the shoulder there. Just a little bit. So that one's probably the most complicated to place, in my opinion. Next up, we go to the shoulder. Shoulder's a little bit easier to place. And what we're gonna do, since our character was modeled in A pose, we're going to just rotate that arm to get it aligned with the wrist and such. And part of the reason I like doing that is because it lets me maintain that triangle pointing straight back, right? And if you don't like those being in the way, you can always disable them or enable them with that same button down there. But yeah, I find that to be a lot more helpful. Let's get this wrist in here as well. Now, if I start, let's turn on the pull vector again. If I start moving this manually, right, it's gonna start affecting that triangle, right? See, same as the knee. So instead, usually when I'm placing that hand, after I get it in like the ballpark, see how my manipulator is not aligned to that hand? It makes it really annoying. So when I'm doing the hands and the fingers, I hold W and I hold left click. So I'm holding both W and left click right now. And now I'm going into object mode, right? And watch my manipulator when it changes. Boom. See that? See how it's aligned to the wrist now? Now there's a lot less likelihood that my triangle is going to get misaligned. You see that? See how I'm like moving it around? You might be like, it's getting a little bit messed up. That's because like, of course, if you push it too far, it is, but it does a decent job of not getting too far off of the directionality that you're looking for there. And then let's get this center of mass, you know? And if you want, you can always rotate this a little bit out to, there we go. That's pretty center of mass right there. I like that. And then let's look at our elbow placement. Elbow needs to be, that's looking pretty good. I might move it just a fraction of an inch up to be aligned with that little elbow point right here. He has kind of a natural point in his model. So I'm gonna use that as the elbow. Next up, the hand. So I usually try to make sure you're in, I'm gonna hold W, hold left click, make sure you're in object mode. And I always try to get that, the thumb to be aligned with the rotation of the model's thumb right there, you see? So this base thumb joint right there, keep that where if you move your own hand in real life, like observe the pivot point in real life. You know, I wish I had like a hand cam that I could show you there, but yeah, we're gonna align that and then go into W for move and just make sure that like, see the thumb is pointing up right there. I probably want to rotate this a little bit more to match that, right? So see how I'm kind of aligning that blue axis right there with like the way that the thumbnail is pointing. So that's a real nice thing to do. It makes it so your thumb clamps a little bit better. So next up, we're putting these joints in the fingers right here, and there we go. And then this last joint right here, this always goes at the tip. Now, as far as I know, Advanced Skeleton doesn't use much of it, but if you did like some crazy setup, I'm sure you could get like IK fingers working with this. But I'm gonna do the same thing for the rest of my fingers as well. Let's put first at the knuckle, and then let's align the rotation with kind of the natural rotation of those fingers. And then I'm going to rotate the rest of this in. I'm gonna go down to the next joint. I'm gonna get that right along that crease of the finger right there. Actually, I'm gonna line it up with that top knuckle instead. And then let's do the same thing for this. Let's move this down. This is also why I like that object axis for moving these. If your joints are too big, like mine are a little bit large, you can just go to display, animation, and do joint size, and then just drag this down to be a more reasonable level right there. That's looking pretty good. It might not work as well for like the other stuff, but like I like it for the fingers there. So feel free to close that. Feel free to reset it whenever you're doing some other part of the model. And I'm just gonna align that a little bit better with the finger, and then again put this at the very tip. There we go. Next up, let's do the other finger. I'm gonna try to go faster through these so I don't take as much of your time up, but I just want to see, I just want to show you the process. There we go, there we go. And then there we go. And let's put this at the tip. I'm gonna rotate this. There we go. There we go, beautiful. Next finger, right here, put that at the knuckle. And then I'm gonna rotate this. After this, we're going to do the head. And then I'm going to add a custom joint, and then we'll do the basic skinning for the character. Basic skinning. There we go. There we go, and then that is pretty well aligned. Feel free to skip. Actually, I'm like almost done with the finger, but yeah, there we go, the hands. I hope you guys skip past to when I'm doing the other stuff. So here we go, back for after you're done with the hand. What you want to do is go up to the neck joint, right? And you can always check what you're like looking at based on like your channel blocks. You want the neck to be at the base of the neck. This is another joint that is easy to mess up. You want this to be at the base of the neck. A lot of people put it in like the midway point of the neck. So they're like, yeah, center of mass. It's like, yeah, center of mass for like placing it, but this is the pivot point, right? The neck, it needs to be able to rotate from the chest, right? So this one, put that at the base of the neck. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah, let's go to shading. Can we just do X-rays? It's like a little bit easier to see for you guys. So yeah, see how it's at the base of the neck right there? Like if you look at that, that's his neck, you can see on the inside. And then head, another one that's easily messed up. Put this in the base of the skull. Essentially, I draw like an invisible line from the chin back to the head, And then I try to get that to be center of mass. But this guy's got like a little bit of a longer jaw, so it's kind of throwing it off a little bit from the huge. But I'm putting it kind of at the base of the skull. Think about where the skull, like where the spine inserts into the skull, but further in, a little bit center of mass there, right? Next up, the jaw. We go in, and if you think about your jaw, like it gives you a nice visual. Like if this character were to open their mouth, where do you want that pivot point to be? So some stylized characters, you might want to put it forward. Others, like you might want to even like put it back here, you know, so you can get like a big opening thing. I usually get it a little bit lined up with the earlobe, depending on the jaw. And then let's put this jaw at the, his beard's kind of throwing it off. Normally you put it right there. I'm gonna put it out here though. Just put it, if your character doesn't have a gigantic beard like this guy, put it at the point of the chin, you know. Otherwise, I'm gonna put it out here, right? There we go. So that's the base of the head. Then we do the eyeball right here, and try to get that as perfectly centered as possible. As perfectly centered as possible, y'all. If you want, you could make a cube that kind of like, you could take a cube that's like subdivided once on all axes and put that in the eye and then snap it to those different borders to get it perfectly like encapsulated, like almost as if that were like a bounding box for the eye, you know. But yeah, I'm just gonna eyeball it for this because that's like it takes a while. There we go. There we go. A little bit off center there. And I think I can snap to this vert up here. And that'll be aligned on at least 2 axes there. If I enable wireframe unshaded, I'm just gonna go boom. So I'm just holding V and I'm snapping on those axes, and then I'm holding V and I'm snapping on the vertical axes as well. There we go. So now that's looking pretty good. If your guys' topology isn't nice for those eyes, then that's a little bit unfortunate. That's gonna give you, it's gonna be much harder to snap there. So let's turn that off, and let's turn off shading, X-ray. There we go. And then let's just move this last joint, the very final joint in the skeleton, to the top. There you go. And then just make sure all of that stuff's center of mass. That's how you set up your joints, y'all. All right. So if you haven't, please file save scene as and call this King Rig joint placement. So this is like the first file where you place the joints, right? So something to check before you go on to the next step is, one, when you're holding D to move the pivot points, sometimes you accidentally press S. And if you look at my timeline, there's a big red mark there. That's going to ruin part of Advanced Skeleton's like rig creation. So what you have to do is delete all of those, any keys that you accidentally set. So to check that, you can click on your root. You can do select hierarchy. And then as long as you don't have a red tick mark there or anywhere else in your timeline, you're good. If you do, you can just right click the key. Like you can like scrub your timeline over, right click that key, and then do delete. And that will delete the key. You won't delete the actual rig, you know. So very important difference there. All right. So we're pretty much ready to start the skinning process. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to add an extra control for the hair at the end. Right, so big milestone for the video. Oh, nice. Looks like you can snap to the center of. Ooh, that might be nice for like the wrist and for like the fingers and stuff. That's pretty cool. Nice, interesting. I like that. And then you got an add joints tool there as well. I'm just kind of looking through the list, making sure that we're not missing anything. Yeah, I think we're good. So once you have that joint placement file ready, you can do build advanced skeleton. So click that and then don't touch your computer. Just let it do its thing. Just let it do its thing. Look, it's mirroring over the joints. Oh, it's adding a bunch of controls on our character. Oh, very nice, very nice. Very nice. Alrighty. So, one thing that I'm not too big on is that it has made our feet a little bit misaligned. So now, actually it's just visual. Okay, nice. Not too much of a problem. I was worried that my pivot point for that foot would be like misaligned there. I was a little bit worried about that. So if you're seeing anything that's like really weird, like see the knees are kind of they're kind of bending a little bit inward there. I want that to be more planar and straight out. So if you see any problems with this, click toggle, and then you can try to fix that in here. So one, I'm gonna hold D and I'm gonna hold V to snap, and I want this to be aligned. Oh, sorry, let's go into world mode. I want this to be aligned with that foot a little bit. And then I'm gonna also re-enable. I'm hoping that fixes that weird little visual problem. And then I'm going to re-enable my pole vectors. Where are they? Nice. So this triangle must be pointing slightly inward. Instead, I'm going to hold D and just get it to be a little bit straight. Now it's too far out. Let's hold D. I'm gonna move it a little bit forward and one tick there. That's looking a little bit better. It's probably not perfect still, but that's fine. But once you do that, if you've made any changes or if you had to do anything, you can just do rebuild advanced skeleton. And that part, this is why this plugin costs money, because that is amazing. That is not normal for a lot of things, right? Rigging is very difficult. It's usually kind of a one-way pipeline almost. There's obviously ways to fix problems that arise, but just wait until it says it's rebuild complete. Nice, there we go. I didn't quite fix the visuals on that. I'm wondering if it's drawing based on that end tip right there. It might be. So at least functionally though, it's not wrong. And then that's bending a little bit straighter forward now. They're not as facing into each other. So you now have your rig, right? And as I move that rig, it is not, the character is not following it, right? That's a problem for us, okay? It's not a bad problem. It's not a bad problem. It's expected at this point, but binding all of this stuff to the skeleton is the next step, right? But I want to be very clear before we do that. At this point, I would fix any controls that you can't see, right? So see how when I press 4, look at the neck control in there. Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh, it's impossible to select even with that on, right? So if you don't want to select the model, remember you can just turn that into like reference mode, and then it'll be a lot easier to select your model. So we need to fix our controls, but you'll notice that we have our joints in here, okay? I don't want you, if you click these joints at all at this point and start moving them and keying them, rotating them, moving them around, you're going to destroy your rig, okay? I want to be very clear about that. You're going to lose progress. You're going to damage your file. At this point, once you see these glowy controls on your character, don't you ever think about just going in and grabbing these joints and moving it around. That destroys your character. I'm going to say that again. Don't grab the joints. It destroys your character if you move those around and key them and do weird stuff to overwrite these connections, okay? Just want to be very clear about that. You can tell that I have PTSD from fixing many a student file where they've done some weird stuff to the skeleton. But yeah, so in order to prevent that, right, there's a few things that we can do, right? So if you go expand this menu up here, you can turn off joints. Oh man, my Zelda music stopped. Zelda music? Come back. Sorry about that. But like if you go back to the skeleton, to prevent you from selecting the joints. You can turn off joint selection in here, right? Now look at that. I can't grab any of that at all, right? Now I can, and I can ruin my rig, right? So that's how easy and dangerous it is without that. So that's one way. Another way is to just go to show and then turn off joints. We do need to see the joints in a little bit though, so be careful for that one. But yeah, so easiest way, use selection sets up here. There we go. And now let's get into getting these controls exposed, right? So remember, this control's like deep in here, right? I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. So the way that we can fix this is if you scroll down, there's a control curves thing right here, and you can scale it up by, if I wanted this to be twice the size, I could just type 2 and then click scale. And that'll be bigger. A nicer way is like if I select one of these, and then if I hold right click in this empty space over here, I can go to control vertex. It's a little bit easier to select that way. And then now I can change the shape of it too. So if I press 5, I can scale this up, and this is the neck control, right? So I want that to be kind of visible around the neck. And then on this front one, I can get that to be, because the neck is pretty important, we want that to be a locatable control. Let's move that one forward. I can even go into these magenta points over here. These are the CVs, control vertices. Or maybe it's curved vertices, who knows? I could probably search it up, but yeah, so now my neck is easily exposed and movable. So now I can rotate it easier. Same thing with the scapula. Same thing. So I'm going to go in, control vertex, boom. Let's move these up. Ooh, it's actually accidentally grabbing more than just that control. Let's go there. I'm gonna move this over. Scapula is a hugely important control, probably the most forgotten control that I see in student work as well. So make sure you grab that. If you want to just grab one of these points, if I want to get that shoulder, you can hold control and right click and do 2 CVs, and it's going to grab just that shape's control vertices. So I can scale that up. So now we have the arms controls there. Now, since we changed that side, you'll see that the other side didn't change. If you just click these controls, and then we did the character's right side, if you just do right to left, boom, look, it fixes the other side completely. I'm telling you. Advanced Skeleton doesn't pay me, but I will give them all the publicity that they want because it's an amazing tool, right? There we go. So now we have those all those curves fixed. We're ready to start attaching our skeleton, right? So I'm going to say file save scene. I'll call this control rig generated. So it's or king rig generated right there. There we go. Next up, let's go and bind this to the skeleton. So whenever you're binding a mesh to a skeleton, they call that skinning, right? So you can use, if you like Maya's default tools for that, you can just go to let's turn on root selection. You can just click that root and then like shift click whatever parts of the mesh that you want, and then bind it that way. Advanced Skeleton has a pretty good solution to this though. So under deform option 2, they have skin cage, and I'm going to click create. So essentially what all of this is, and just let it do its thing, what all of these points are I'm just gonna wait until it says that it's done down there. Like look at my cursor, it's like still loading and stuff. So we're just gonna wait for it to finish right there. And skin cage created. Perfect. All right, no more thinking, right? Nice. Nice. Okay, so these skin cages, right? So you have your regular controls, but now you have these neon green little rectangular guys. So I'm gonna scale these up and down. Essentially, underneath your mesh is this little guy. Look at him, look at this little dorky guy. And this guy has, this really blocky guy is already bound to your skeleton, right? So as I move the rig, Whoop, 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 whoop. And then behind the scenes, what's gonna happen is that we're going to copy the weights, the skin weights, to our actual mesh from this, right? So that's what's happening behind the scenes. And so our goal is to, I'm just gonna enable my geometry again. Our goal is to kind of encapsulate this character. Think about it as if we are like almost shrink wrapping the character. Though something that you really want to avoid is scaling this too big to where it will overlap with the other side, right? So we really want to avoid that. We never want to cross this little line of symmetry with this skin cage, or with either side of the skin cage, really, you know. You're gonna get some weird results otherwise. So I'm gonna do that. You can scale these up, you can move them. If you need even more control, you can turn on the red curves, and these give you an extra set of like modifier pieces to fiddle around with to make those the proper size, right? So you can do that, and let's scale this down. Doesn't need to be that big. So just get it into the ballpark. Now there's gonna be things like this front flap. I would actually put a joint hierarchy in there to rig it. But everything else we can scale up or down a little bit. Honestly, this guy's skin weights are gonna be pretty complex because of the beard and stuff. Again, I would probably rig that on its own separate thing. I have another plugin that I use for that. So during the skinning video, you might see a different character being used here. But let's go into the green. I'm gonna scale that. Don't scale your controls. Remember, your controls are your round NURB curves. The round circles, those are your controls. You don't want to scale those ones. I'm pressing 5. So I want a clear break between the fingers out. Honestly, this default one's pretty good. I might just leave it right there. I might just leave it. And the head, I've never gotten the head to work well with this plugin. I've always had to hand paint my weights there. But what we would do is scale up the neck a little bit. I'm gonna turn off mesh selection because it's being real annoying in there. There we go. I'm just gonna scale that up to be the size of the neck. I'm gonna move it up a little bit so it's not grabbing as much from below, okay? And then there we go. And then next up, let's move this down a little bit. I want to kind of get it below the face right there. I want to get kind of a block that's covering this upper part. So if you get something encapsulating this, you can sometimes prevent some issues, but the face is honestly one of the parts that I have to fix the most, you know. So let me turn off my geometry so you can see that, right? So anything that you did to this side, you can always mirror it over because Advanced Skeleton is amazing. And let's grab some of these. We might want to split this a little bit apart right there, you know. So I'm gonna do that. Anything that you want it to be mirrored over, you can do right to left because we did the character's right-handed side. Excuse me. Oh wait, that's the control curves. I'm such a fool. Let's close that menu so I don't get confused. It's in the skin. So we did the right side. Let's do the left side there. And then if anything is like mis-scaled or something, you can always just like click it again. I've noticed older versions have like a little bit of a bug where they don't mirror properly. But there we go. So now we did the skin cage. It's ready to be copied over. The very last step is to open up our group, open up our geometry, and we're going to bind it to this geo that's in this list. So first I'm going to save as, and I'm going to do KingRig pre-bind. This is before we bound the mesh, right? So next up, I'm going to select everything that I want to move with the rig, okay? And I probably want everything except for the, I probably don't want the beard, right? So do we have beard in here? I'm gonna control click that to deselect it. because I want to rig that with its own thing. And if your skin cage is perfect, you can just do like go to build pose. If something pops up that's like, hey, do you want to go to build pose and proceed? Click go to build pose and proceed every time. Otherwise, you're going to get some weird results, most likely. And then what we can do is simply go to the skin cage section here and go to copy weights. It's going to think, let it do its thing. Let it do its thing. It's doing a lot of math. And you'll see a skin cluster appears in there, right? And that's what's binding the mesh to the actual skeleton. Let's hide our beard and let's hide our skin cage, our skin curves, all that. And then we have to do our test. We grab the root, go into move, and there you go. We got an animating character. Whoa, there we go. So you can move this character around and animate them as you would expect. And next up, you have to fix things like this. Look at that stretching. Ooh, awful, right? So that'll be the next part. Probably a separate video for that. But let's turn on the beard. I did mention that, like, I might want to add some functionality to something, right? What we'll need to do is add joints onto this, generate controls, and then bind it to those joints, right? So it's gonna be a bit wild there. So let's show you how to do that. Let's toggle back in. We can always save a post bind as well, just for, like, I want you guys to be safe when you're rigging, because it's, you know, can be a very destructive process. But let's toggle it fit advanced, and then I want some more joints after this one, right? So let's go to display, animation joint size. Let's size this up a little bit. It's like really tiny there, right? So let's get something reasonable like that, and we can go into our profile view. So I'm pressing space to bring up my 4 cameras. I'm going to go into the side view here, and I want joints coming off of this one, right? So I think there was even an add joints button, so you can use this one, or you could go to your rigging menu and do skeleton, create joints. I'm pretty sure it's the same one. Beep. And I'm going to create some joints that go down the length of the beard. If you press 4, you can see that it's creating new ones in here. There we go. And so now I have all those joints. If you want to be nice and professional about it, you can name these by double clicking them and renaming them to be specific, or you can even select all of them and then go to, what is it? I'm looking for search and replace names. Modify, search and replace names. Search for joint in my selected stuff, and I'll just call this beard joint. Place that. Boom. Look at that beard jump. Look at that speed. So fast. So next up, let's get this attached to the rest of the skeleton. Let's click this, and then shift click the parent. I want this to be parented to the jaw end. And I'm going to do, I'm just gonna press P. Boom. So now that all those beard joints are now in the hierarchy there. So after you do that, if you're adding specific stuff like this, you're gonna have to go back up to the top, and you wanna add some attributes to these. Now, like I said earlier, if you were adding like a tail or something to the character, you might want to add some labels to this for some IK stuff. If you click the little question mark, you can really get some good details on this. Like what to, like, so for like a deer's leg right here, you'd just like label it with leg aim back, hip back, foot back, you know. So there you go. So that's all that sort of stuff. There's also these attributes in here, so you can give things some really crazy controls. Like I'm saying, this plugin is wild, guys. It's really advanced. It lives up to the name. So yeah, lots of really cool stuff there. We don't quite need that though, but a lot of those, but I want to do no mirror just in case that joint is trying to get mirrored. I don't want a mirror there. And then, so now I just click the joint that I want that attribute to be on. I want to do add, boom. So no mirror, perfect, right? Next up, I want probably a control for this last little joint down here. So if you go down to the bottom, you can see control, because it never gives a control to the last joint in the chain, like the fingers, you know, you don't need a control for that. But if you do, like I might want to get a little bit of a bend to the end of this little beard, you know, so I'm going to add the control attribute there. And then I'm going to go space, go back in here, and then let's do rebuild advanced skeleton. I'm gonna laugh if this like breaks after I've been hyping it up so much. But it's gonna be thinking, it's like, oh, I'm detecting new joints in here. Let's get some controls for you for those joints. And I'm like, thank you very much, program. You're a blessing for us. And updated orientations. And it's thinking. Rebuild complete. There we go. I'm always nervous to touch after, but now we have joints that we can control in here, and it looks like it didn't give us a control for that last joint for some reason, but we could figure that out later. But look at that, now you can move that beard around, and if you instead, because you need to skin it, right? That beard needs to be moving with the rest of it. I believe we didn't skin it the first time. Yeah, we did not. So what we can do is let's enable mesh selection, and we have joint selection. So I'm going to shift click all of these joints down to that end joint. I'm going to click this joint as well as the jaw. I could even do maybe just the head. So now you'll see that I have a lot of different joints selected. I'm kind of telling it exactly what I want it to be bound to. So then if I shift click my beard shape afterwards and just do the default bind skin, let's do the options. If you do joint hierarchy, it's gonna get all of like the eyes and stuff in there too. We don't want that. Let's just do selected joints only, apply and close with geodesic voxel. Boom. Now, if I bend this beard, there we go. Look at that. Beautiful. So that is the default way to use advanced skeleton, and it's an amazing program, lots of functionality, and that's how you get a default bind. And then I'll show you guys how to fix other like bending and stuff that like problems with the actual skin itself in there. That'll be the next part. But yeah, thanks for watching, y'all.